Hello and welcome back to the channel. You join me on a very windy day. It's been actually a very windy weekend. It's the 8th of December today, and yeah, we've had high winds all of Saturday, and we're kind of at lunchtime on Sunday, and yeah, it's been pretty windy all day, probably about 50-60 mile an hour gusts. So yeah, it's not been the greatest. I've made a big decision. The front garden, which is a traditional English style garden with topiary and everything like that, lots of herbaceous plants. I'm going to be changing this garden next year, which is my kind of big news, really. It's a large area of garden, probably equal to the size of the back garden, but it's a lot longer garden at the front. It's not as wide as the back garden, um, but yeah, it gives me lots of opportunity to add a lot more plants, which I haven't got really space in the back garden at all. And yeah, I'd like to try and make this so, although it's going to be an exotic style garden as well, I'm hoping to make it a little bit different to the back garden. Obviously, the theme's the same ultimately, but I'm preparing to create some different planting zones in the front. And we have in this section here, this is my woodland garden, and actually, there's some great plants in here, like the acanthus with the evergreen leaves there, that will fit perfectly into the new theme. We also have, this is the yew tree, which is currently being battered by the storm. That provides quite a lot of protection underneath it. And one particular palm that I have really struggled with growing is the Phoenix canariensis palm. And actually not too far away from here, probably about 4 or 5 miles down the road, they do grow because they are nearer the sea, and you get a bit more, the air is a bit warmer around there. But this area of the garden is actually pretty well protected. So we have a laurel hedge to the front, we have a privet hedge to the side, so that helps with the prevailing wind, and obviously, yeah, we've got the yew tree, which is providing cover underneath. So I'm thinking of trying one of the Phoenix canariensis palms, basically where this bamboo cane is. So it will have overhead protection on there. So although I will have to wrap it when it's a little bit younger, on the coldest of nights, it should survive okay. And it's very well drained down here as well, and it does get the morning sun up until about kind of 11 o'clock, sort of towards midday. So it should be well protected, and hopefully it will survive in that location, because I really want to try and get a phoenix palm to grow big in my garden, and there is nowhere else really that's as sheltered. So anyway, that's enough about the phoenix palm. So essentially, I have started to lay out a few things in the garden. So, and this is how I kind of worked out in the back garden as well, which I didn't film the first time round. But excitingly, I'm getting to film it all from scratch for the front garden. So the ultimate plan is to have some herbaceous plants, which I have in the front garden here. So things like the Rebecca, we have the lamb's ear plant, which is Stachys, and a few other plants. I'm planning to keep those, but sort of relocate them within the garden. So the way I kind of I'm looking at sort of approaching this new project is I'm looking in the garden where I need the heights, and my first things that really go in is going to be palms, because they're evergreen and they will give me height and structure, and they're very architectural in their nature. And bearing in mind I'm keeping things like the Acer in the middle of the shot there, and these two maples, one to the left of the shot and one just down here, so I'm keeping those in there for height, and they've got big leaves as well, so they'll sort of go with the theme. But yeah, I'm adding the structure to the garden first, which is why there's all these bamboo canes everywhere. So as I've talked about, this bamboo cane will represent a Phoenix canariensis palm, and this bamboo cane I'm thinking will be a Trachycarpus fortunii. I'm going to buy one quite young, mainly due to cost, because I've got some bigger ones that I've already ordered. So that will grow up and fill this area of the sky here, and as you drive in to the property, which I'll just back up a little bit here, so as you drive in, you're basically going to have the Phoenix palm on the left there, and you're going to have the Trachycarpus fortunii basically next to the hedge, and then that will grow up and hide the neighbour's kind of manky looking cherry tree. But it will give me some evergreen foliage eventually above the hedge line, which is why I'm selecting the Trachycarpus fortunii and not a Camarops humilis, because although those will get bigger eventually, they take a long time to get there, and I'm using the Camarops humilis in other locations as more evergreen kind of bushes. So that's the left hand side of the garden and the woodland garden and everything there. There's a possibility that I wanted to create some kind of bridge that goes over like a little stream, but I need to work out how I would do that, because I'd need a body of water to this right hand side, and then I would also need a body of water or like a little stream or something going through the left hand side. Quite willing to do the work. It wouldn't be particularly expensive to put in, but will it? Yes, it will add a feature to the front garden if done well, but I don't really need it as part of the design, if I'm honest. So we'll see on that one. One thing that I do want to consider, so as you drive in, one thing my wife mentioned is that when we look from our lounge window, which is located just behind the Christmas tree there, when you look down the garden, you can see people walking past the bottom of the house in this section here. So yeah, you see people walking past. Of course, there's no plants on this side because of the fence, and you can see the neighbour's house as well. We've got good screening on the right, but we want to kind of screen the left, but obviously we need to be able to drive in the drive. So that basically creates a slight dilemma, but actually every dilemma is an opportunity. So where these bamboo canes are where I'm going to place some more palms. So the tallest cane here will represent a Trachycarpus fortunii, which is about that height already. So I've bought it reasonably tall. So you'll get to see, obviously the trunk will be formed, which is great, and the foliage will be at height. That means I then need to underplant it to create more of an evergreen sort of barrier. But that's not a problem because I have lots of space in this section here. I'll talk about the ropes in a second. So yeah, that's going to be the Trachycarpus fortunii at that height. This cane here, in the middle of the shot, will be a Butea palm because I like the kind of fountain shape of the palm, and it's got a nice sort of silvery blue foliage to it, so it'd be a good contrast. This smaller cane here, I think it's going to be a Camerops humilis again. So that's going to form just like a low bush. And there's plenty of space in between for some more kind of shrubs. We need some evergreen shrubs in here. So I'm thinking things like choisias might be a good option, because this is south facing as well, the front garden. So it gives me way more options. So although I won't be putting things like fatsias in, which the back garden's got quite a few of, the palms and a lot of the shrubs will love the sun. So yeah, Camerops humilis around about there. Then as we look up into this section, again, this massive bamboo cane is going to be another Trachycarpus fortunii. They're a good option because they are reasonably priced for the size of the palm, and they're absolutely bulletproof, so you can just put them in and leave them to do their thing, which is great. The front garden, one of the main aims for the front garden is to make sure that there's not too much wrapping of plants, because I've got a small amount of work to do in the back garden when it comes to wrapping plants, moving things into greenhouses and things like that. But I don't want to create double the amount of work in the front garden. So I need to have plants that are going to really perform really well, get established quite quickly, not get absolutely huge and out of hand, but it will give me structure in that to the front garden, because it is actually quite flat, the front garden. There's not sort of lots of nooks and crannies and stuff, which I've obviously created in the back garden. So yeah, that's the selection of plants that I am, well, for the palms anyway. So I'm keeping it quite simple. I'm sticking with things that are generally very reliable, maybe not the Phoenix palm, but I'm only going to have one in the front garden, and it's hopefully going to be protected by the tree. The rope which I've laid out is to give an idea of the potential bed size for these palm trees and other things that are going in there. And the bed I have worked out, I've used a rope just to lay out, because that will also, if I want to change it, I can kind of move the rope around. I've been thinking about this over Christmas as well. Is everything in the right location? Do I need beds bigger, smaller? So I've worked out with tropical gardening that actually having nice curved beds works better. It's more organic, and it just gives you that nice sort of sweeping. You've got a nice sweeping curve, and you've got all your plants kind of planted to that. It just looks really good. So obviously at the moment I've got very straight lines in the front garden. I've got metal edging in, which will need to come out, and I've got an irrigation system in the front, which I will need to dig up some of the lines that I've put in and relocate them, because the one at the very bottom here, on that bottom corner, I won't need a pop-up in that location. But as I was saying earlier on with these things, when you go to do it, it presents another opportunity. And I know from experience that now the topiary garden has grown, this area of grass here never gets watered, because the pop-up comes up from behind that cone, the yew tree cone there, and it sprays into the cone and it doesn't get over this side. So the plan with that is I will run, just got to navigate all around the Christmas decorations. I will have to run another irrigation. There's one here, there's a pop-up about here, but I will run another one along here to somewhere here, and then it will spray down that path, and then it will angle round like that, and it will spray this top path as well. So it means that all the grass will be covered by the irrigation, which it hasn't been in the past. So that will be a decent upgrade. Again, you can see here with the white rope that we will have, just back up a second. So this bit here, I need to maintain a path through here because I'm keeping the topiary garden as it is. It's useful to put the Christmas tree in the center of it. I guess in the summer I could have a palm in the middle of it if I could lift one in there. So that could be quite nice. But yeah, I need to maintain a path through here. So I don't want a straight path and a straight edge, which I've got at the moment. So I've roughly laid out a rope, which I think will be, it will give me a little bit wider grass here because I don't need such a wide bed. Oh, I forgot to mention as well, there's a bamboo cane here, which is going to be another Camerops humilis because I wanted a bush, just as because people drive in and they park their car there, and I think it'd be nice to have an evergreen bush. And I guess eventually it will grow a bit taller, but the tree, I will lift the tree canopy, so that's not a problem. But anyway, yeah, back to the path. So you'll walk down this path here and you'll be presented with an open piece of grass with nothing in the middle of it at all, and it's kind of roughly like a kidney shape. So the curve sweeps around like this. Look at it from the other direction. So you can see it gives me enough width between those U cones and the border. So a little bit narrower border there, which will be slightly limiting in some ways. But there's about 2.5 meters of border depth, so that's fine. And then it will swing out and it will give me an extra good meter here at this point, and then it narrows back down to sort of the original border there, and then we've got this huge depth of border here. And as I say, the reason for that is because of privacy. So when you look down from the window, from the lounge window, it will hide. You can see where that big bamboo cane is in the middle, and if I walk this way you can see that's already going to hide the top part of the house, and then it'll be underplanted with lots of shrubs and maybe some evergreen grasses and things like that. And yeah, that will be a really good opportunity here, because this is going to be a massive border depth, probably my biggest border depth in the whole front and back garden. So there may be some stepping stones through there to a little area or something, but I'll be thinking about that later on. A couple of other things. Hedges are going to be maintained at the same height. Topiary is all staying, so the topiary balls are all staying in here. The lavender is going to come out because actually it only lasts a few years and then it looks really manky and tired, and they all grow at different heights. So I'm thinking with that, taking out all of the lavender, so that will just leave the ball shaped topiary there. And I'm thinking about putting in some of these little red robins, which I've got some in some pots up here and there. So you see they've got the new leaves are red, old leaves are green, and they just stay looking neater for longer. So yeah, I think it will make the front garden a bit more private because, as I say, it's very open at the front, and it also means that I can get some different specimens of, you know, the same kind of plants that I've got in the back garden, but some different sizes, plant them in different locations, and yeah, it just means that I can basically have more palms, which is I like to have a good range of palms in the garden. It also means that the back garden will get thinned out slightly. So I think some of the specimens, I've got a couple of yuccas in particular, which are probably not in the best location. So I'm going to move them because they're not too big at the moment. I'm going to move them to the front garden here, and they will look really architectural and good in there. So so that's sort of working out the structure. So you can see, you know, from an existing garden, it's quite a big tweak because the planting, probably half the planting's changing and half is staying. So yeah, it just means that, you know, I can also introduce some different plants which I haven't got in the back garden. So it keeps my interest in, you know, the exotic gardening and the design side of it. It just keeps that flowing a little bit longer as well. And one of the things that I will have to do really before the spring, so probably have to do it in the winter time, is I will have to dig up any herbaceous which I am not going to keep, and then that will get divided up, and yeah, that will get divided up and planted at work probably. I've got some very good geraniums, actually, some Johnson blue geraniums which I love, and to be honest, they've got decent sized leaves, really electric kind of purpley blue flowers. I'm going to keep those in this garden, and I think geraniums can have a place in a tropical style garden, but obviously they're planted in a straight row at the moment, and they're going to need to be put into a curve and grouped better. The roses I'm not sure about because they've got really bright red pink flowers, sort of reddy pink flowers, so flower wise they would go with the theme, but they are roses, and I'm not sure about roses in a tropical style garden. Let me know your thoughts on that one, because my other option is to put some of the massive dinner plate style dahlias, which were very successful in the back garden, particularly the red variety. I'm thinking of putting those in, grouping those down the border, and I think they would look really good, and they would fit better with the theme. So do I take the roses out, or do I take half the roses out? We shall see on that one. We've got some decent groups of Persicaria, which are probably, they are going to stay, but they might get moved within this border, but they are going to stay in the border somewhere. The goldenrod I will take out, although that's my height at the back at the moment. You know, once these palms get going, and I'm going to put some other tropical style plants in here, so that will take over on there. So yeah, so that's my thoughts on things so far. So a big project,